Olá, bem-vindas e bem-vindos. Sou Denise Barbosa e estamos aqui apresentando o primeiro episódio do McKinsey Talks. Eu queria agradecer muito a presença de todos vocês aqui com a gente nesta manhã. Nessa primeira temporada, teremos uma série de episódios sobre gestão de crise em função do coronavírus. Essa primeira temporada será composta de 9 episódios, onde iremos compartilhar perspectivas, fatos e análises relevantes para nossas empresas nesse momento tão complexo, onde enfrentamos uma crise humanitária sem precedentes. Mas além da necessidade de proteger a saúde de todos nós, também precisamos proteger nossos meios de subsistência. Combater o vírus é o começo. Além da preocupação imediata sobre o impacto real na vida humana, existe a preocupação sobre a grave recessão econômica que pode resultar de uma longa batalha contra um novo coronavírus e, consequentemente, impactar ainda mais vidas. Com base em múltiplas fontes e em nossa análise, o choque das ações de combate ao vírus nas nossas vidas e meios de sobrevivência pode ser o maior em quase um século. Para comentar sobre possíveis formas de reação a esses dois desafios, temos aqui o Reinaldo Fiorini, Managing Partner da McKinsey no Brasil, e Sven Smit, Chair do McKinsey Global Institute, o think tank da McKinsey. Reinaldo, bom dia.
Bom dia, Denise. Bom dia a todos, bom dia a todas. Sejam bem-vindos ao McKinsey Talks. Antes de mais nada, como você disse, Denise, isso é uma grande crise humanitária. Eu acho que todos nós, como indivíduos, como líderes de organizações, temos que refletir e agir para amenizar o sofrimento das pessoas e o sofrimento da sociedade como um todo. Eu espero que este canal, que o McKinsey Talks, possa oferecer uma contribuição nesse momento. Que, usando um pouco da nossa experiência em diversos países, em diversos setores, nós possamos contribuir nesses encontros com insights, com provocações para cada um de vocês poder usar nos seus desafios dos dias de hoje. Nas últimas semanas, nós estávamos todos muito focados em proteger as pessoas, proteger nossos colegas, nossos clientes. Nas próximas semanas, além de continuar as ações para proteger as pessoas, nós vamos também ter que continuar em ações para proteger nossos meios de subsistência. E esse é o imperativo do nosso tempo. Proteger as pessoas e também proteger nossos meios de subsistência. Nós temos conversado, nós temos trabalhado com clientes ao redor do mundo nos diversos setores. Clientes na China, na Coreia do Sul, na Itália, nos Estados Unidos e também aqui no Brasil. Escutando nossos clientes, nós entendemos que este realmente é o imperativo do nosso tempo. Não uma frente ou outra, mas ações nas duas frentes. Nós estamos aprendendo com o que aconteceu nos outros países, com qual é o impacto do necessário isolamento social na economia, seja olhando a China, Coreia, a Itália. Nós temos visto que o impacto econômico é maior, esse impacto econômico é maior do que cada um de nós viu anteriormente. As pessoas não gastam nada além do essencial. Estimamos que nos próximos meses a queda nas despesas discricionárias vai ser mais de 50%. Isso tem um impacto. O Sven, o nosso convidado de hoje, tem falado com líderes de organizações ao redor do mundo nessas últimas semanas. E ele publicou na semana passada um artigo falando justamente deste imperativo. É um prazer nosso ter o Sven aqui hoje para conversar conosco sobre isso. Sven, thank you very much for being with us here today. In your article that you published last week, you summarized very well, in a very compelling way, the imperative of our times to, protect our lives, but also our livelihoods. It would be great, Sven, please, if you could just share some initial thoughts for us on what was the thinking, what are your perspectives on this?
Thank you so much, and good to be with you, Reinaldo and Denise. The world was, up until 3-4 weeks ago, of course, this is the world outside China, was working hard to just launch efforts to contain the virus, to suppress the virus, and increasingly moving towards forms of lockdown, shelter in place, and so on, and navigating the people to take distance on a physical basis while trying to keep people connected, and so on. Of course, in Europe, that started in Italy, and then it started to spread in Europe. It's now in the US, it's now everywhere. I've been studying India recently. It's really serious there too, and I know it's on the shores in Latam in different ways already as well. And so there's uncertainty at the moment about the virus. You know, will we bring this down in 2 to 3 months? Will we bring this down only through the summer or in the summer? Or will this take much longer because it will just keep coming back? Does it feel like we will be as successful to lock it down as in China, Korea, Japan, Singapore, and we can gradually go back up after 2-3 months? Or does it feel it's 4 to 5 or 6? Or is it much worse? So that's the scenario for the virus. But what we started to work on 2 weeks ago is, what does that do to the economy? Not so much because we wanted to count money, but just what does it do to people? What do people do when they go in lockdown? Well, when people go in lockdown, they get nervous because they start to feel that their jobs might be at risk, or they actually go in lockdown because they don't have a job. If you're a waiter in New York right now, you're out of a job. And that's how the system works. There's no protection. In Europe, many people go home on reduced work hours. It feels a little different than being fired, let's call it that way. But no matter what way they go home, we find that their discretionary spending, so televisions, cars, washing machines, you name it, go way down. There's certain items that go up. They buy more food to stock up. They maybe buy some more gear to have bandwidth and all that stuff. But it really goes down a lot. Exports and imports jitter, investments jitter. And when we looked at the numbers, not just theoretically, but also practically in credit card spending and other things, even in some places pre-lockdown, you could see discretionary spending come down 40 to 50%. If you then have a jittery import-export and you have a jittery investment, it is very easy to imagine that in the month you lock down, you have a 10% decrease in GDP. And then the question is it 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or 4 or 5 or 6? If it's 3 months, you have a quarter of 10% down. A quarter of 10% down is enormous. That is the single biggest shock since World War II. It's also bigger than the first quarter of the Great Depression. And that started to make us think that we cannot just discuss the virus, we also need to discuss the economy. There was a Wall Street Journal article on the Thursday that we were working this work that basically teed up the dilemma and said, maybe we'll have to go to a place where we need to choose between the people dying from the virus and the people affected by the economy. And we made the point that that at least can't be our primary way of thinking, that it is an and. We need to work to safeguard our lives and safeguard our livelihoods. And while the news cycle and the conversational cycle, which goes at incredible speed at the moment, was not yet internalizing the real data, we can maybe share a little picture from some headlines. You know, Friday was a difficult headline from the New York Times when they said the US jobless rate, which is normally 300,000 a week, moved to north of 3 million. That is just enormous. In 1 week, 10-folding the number of unemployed coming into the economy in a week. It's possible that it's north of 10 million, 20 million, not too long from now, if this continues. So this curve with the unemployment claims and then the spike up was on the front page, covering the entire front page of the New York Times. So we were kind of 6 days ahead doing the modeling work that suggested this could happen. And then the news starts coming. And we now see the conversation shifting to how do we solve both? And I'll say one more remark maybe on that. maybe on the next slide, where we show the scenarios. So while everybody was reading and browsing on, we need to flatten the peak, we need to increase the hospital capacity and testing and find better treatment to flatten the curve. Everybody has read Thomas Pueyo and many other people. We started to think, if in the same time that work produces this enormous shock, we will need to work on supporting the people that are affected by the lockdowns, prepare to get work back safely, and then accelerate the economy afterwards. What we did see governments do is massive amounts of work to support the people. Germany announced a 10% of GDP bailout. The US passed a $2.5 trillion support bill. And it goes on. Everywhere in the world, the gates are open for everything possible. And that's good, because lots of people are affected and they need to be supported. And it's economically the right thing to do. There's no economist currently saying it's wrong to support people in an event that they didn't cause themselves. But what is less talked about is, how will we get back to work? And the problem is this: if you give people a lot of money that sit at home uncertain about their job, does that mean they start spending? No. They will only start to go back to normal patterns of life once they know the normal pattern of life is coming back. No matter how much money they have in the pocket, they will spend it on food. And there's some people that don't have enough money for food, so giving them some money will get them to buy some more food. So that's how serious this is, of course. But we need to get to a narrative that, while we're having the narrative to suppress the virus and all the work that goes with that and all the hospital expansion, that we start to think about, how will we tell people that you can go back to work? And just since we published this a week ago, I've been in 200 different conversations, where at least half of them were about, what is it that we're going to do to go back to work? And while the world is in an innovation race to suppress the virus, which is tremendous, people work on treatment, ventilators, breathing machines, ICU units, care at home, better contact to the people. It's amazing what's happening. The speed of innovation feels, to me, 3 months happened in 2 days. FDA approvals go in a day, not in 5 years. People can collaborate that normally would be not allowed to collaborate. It's amazing what's happening. And that's the race to basically suppress the virus and build hospital capacity to treat the ones that are affected. And the massive amounts of support that I've seen are also there, but the logistics of getting the money to the people is actually not that easy at the moment still. So people are working on that. But the amount of work that's being done on how to get back to work is still conceptual. Now, people are doing tracing apps, people are working on testing, because testing is part of it. But what are the ways that you can get back to work from a work protocol perspective? Maybe you call it, there's health and safety when you go to work right now, but we need to have corona consistent health and safety. And strangely, today, we have people that go to work. My daughter, who's not even graduated as a doctor, has been called to go to a corona ward. She's safe. I believe she's safe, because what do these doctors have? They have clothing and procedure that keeps them safe while they are very close to infectious people. The milk factory in my country still runs. I believe it still runs in Brazil as well. And we have apparently found a procedure that a milk factory can run. We also have found a procedure such that a pharma company can run, because we need the pharma. The next innovation race that we believe needs to start now in preparation, while we're in lockdown, we need to find the innovation that gets us back to work. And we will have to work on what is called continue to separate people in time, in place, and maybe in segmentation. So people are now, and I've heard a lot recently on this as we opened up this topic, the ideas are flowing. Could the elderly stay home still while younger people go back? Could you do something where you have 2 shifts? You work 2 weeks and then you go back in quarantine, and then the other shift works 2 weeks. If you do that, actually you halve the contagion. And so people are starting to innovate ways to get back they're not yet announced by the prime ministers of most countries because they are still working on getting people into lockdown, which I think is the right thing to do, by the way. But I believe that we need to have an as massive effort as we have on suppressing the virus and the consequences on healthcare, on how we will get this economy back. Because the difference between a 10% shock that lasts 6 months and one that lasts 3 years, or what the market might be pricing, which is even worse, is just too big. So the predicament or the imperative of our time is to work as hard to safeguard our lives as to safeguard our livelihoods. And if we do that, I believe we could do both and not just one. Let me pause for a second. We can go deeper in the scenarios in a moment, but maybe there's some questions.
Yeah, sure, Sven. It's a huge challenge. And Sven, you clearly state in your article that the answer cannot be accepting that the pandemic will overwhelm and our healthcare system and thousands, if not millions, will die. But I believe that your provocation is how can we also invest time and brain power to find safe ways to keep any possibly activity ongoing, and also start to prepare reignite engines fast, that what you just mentioned. Can you comment a bit on recommended actions on both imperatives?
Yeah, so on the health side, of course, everybody is watching on Worldometer or John Hopkins or something, the measurements of the number of people infected, the number of people dying, and so on. In that place, I believe we will still watch these numbers every day and every hour even. But there's one other number that we will have to start to watch, which is the combination of the hospital capacity that for critical care and the number of patients requiring critical care admitted. Because when that number goes down, we know that the peak has flattening and the hospitals will get space. So the hospitals are doing everything possible now here in Europe, where we may be 1 or 2 weeks ahead versus the time zone that you guys are in Brazil. The hospitals are doing everything possible to expand capacity. Yeah, and as the capacity expands, and you also suppress the virus with social distancing and lockdowns and shelter in place and whatever, at some point you would hope the peak of patients coming into the hospital to go down. And there might be some good news that at least that curve seems to flatten in northern Italy, which of course is somewhat of a Wuhan for Europe. And in one little town, which was the worst hit, Lodi, the curve actually has flattened completely. So it does give some evidence that this stuff could work in another place than China or Korea or Japan, where everybody sort of says, you know, we're not of that culture. So the number to watch in addition to the cases and so on is critical care capacity and number of people coming in that require critical care. When is that going to drop? It's a very critical number. But on the other side, so the livelihood side, I would love to see 2 metrics. Is the money that is being proposed getting to the people most in need? How do you do this with homeless or illegal immigrants? You know, they need to get that money too, because that's the group that will be the most pained for no work and livelihoods. And then, you know, everybody else too, don't get me wrong, you know, a large swath of the population will be hit by this. But I would want to see a metric that while we're in lockdown, these people are supported. And the second metric I would like to see is, do I see a narrative emerging of ideas that will get us back to work? And we don't need to have the full solution soon, and we don't need to go back to work soon. An economy and a society starts to feel better the moment the direction changes. Now we're all feeling it like a cliff. That's okay. As long as we feel 1 month from now that we can see the path out of the cliff. That's the most important metric. We don't need to be out of it. Economies start to repair the moment they see a path. And now there's the discussion, you know, open, close, or not, and you know, how long and all that stuff. But what we will know, and that is a certainty, that after the close, this virus is still there. So when we open up, we will have to do it in a way that the virus doesn't resurge too quickly, because then we'll get a triple hit or a double hit or something. And so our calling to solve both things at the same time is that all the efforts that are there are great and should continue at full pace and full vengeance. But there is a second effort needed that makes it clear to people that there is a path out. And I think there's lots of ideas being shared on how that works. I can talk about that more, but that path needs to be described. Otherwise, how do you want to be closed in if you don't know how to go out? That feeling needs to shift, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, Sven, this challenge to make the money get to the people who need it the most is a big challenge here in Brazil, for sure. In your article, you mentioned behavioral protocols. Can you tell us a bit more about what it means and why is it relevant at this point?
Yeah, so we're at social distancing and physical distancing. We should call this thing, the WHO claims this too, we should call it physical distancing. We should be socially close, but it will have to be over Zoom or some other technology. So we are living protocols right now. We work from home, you shop with fewer people, so you don't bring your family to the shop. At least that's what's happening in Europe. You stand in line for the shop, the entry is limited. All of these are, call it protocols or ways to do stuff. And I actually think it's quite amazing. If you have told me a year ago that the entire world would change the way they shop in 2 weeks, I would have said you're crazy. It will never happen. And guess what? When there's a big enemy, we can get anything done. So the question is, can we have protocols that we now use to get my daughter to work in the hospital, to go shopping because we still allow each other to have food, to actually produce the food without contagion? Can we have that for every job, every activity? And I actually find that interesting that we are now comfortable to shop in a very different way. It's very interesting that a milk factory still runs. Could we do that for everything else? I've been talking to the CEOs of the largest temp agencies in the world that are facing a very significant decline in the workforce that they are now channeling to jobs because of this. Very big. We're talking big, big numbers. And they want to talk about launching an effort on this. No, what are the health and safety procedures by sector, by function, by task that are corona consistent, so we can get back? And I don't have all the answers. I'll probably said some things that are wrong, but I'm saying them so we can be inspired. That's part of the puzzle.
And so you mentioned China. So I guess China is already moving in this direction, right? If they are like in the future comparing to the rest of the world. Any examples you can share with us?
Factories opening up in China, or even that have kept open in China, they had the disciplines of they separated teams. The most critical teams actually had to be tested to go back into the factory. And the less critical teams, they basically had to write down, I have been in quarantine, and they were then checked on the phone whether they actually were. And so that you get a reasonably high prediction rate. The people live in dormitories, which they already did, and the outside workers go into the same process. Show your quarantine, you go into the dormitory, and they're 4 weeks on and 1 or 2 weeks off. I'm not saying that's a work procedure that maybe works in Brazil or works in my country, the Netherlands, but that's a procedure. The shopping procedure is still roughly there. Yeah, they wear masks, whether it works or not, I don't know. There's a big debate on masks. Some people say it works or not, but that's the procedure too. What happens now is if you land in Hong Kong, you get a device that tracks and traces you so that you are in quarantine coming in. I don't necessarily like all of that, or if we think of us being tracked and traced. But in Iceland, they launched a Trace Together app where people voluntarily say what their status is. And then with some sharing, you can start measuring the risk a little bit and start to make localized actions. I again don't know whether that will solve the puzzle, but if you do 5, 6 different things in a certain territory, in total, that might just get the contagion thing down enough that you could work. I've heard people that are working on issues like you split the country in sub-regions you measure the intensity of the epidemic by sub-region, and you do what's called micro lockdowns. So you lock down one area where it's intense to get the virus back under control, while the rest opens up. And so you basically get this competition of, do you have the right behavior between the different sub-regions that is consistent with containing the virus.
Okay, Sven, I'm going to bring Reinaldo back to the conversation, so I'm going to switch to Portuguese for a minute, okay? Reinaldo, o que já está sendo possível da gente ver aqui no Brasil sobre as prioridades das empresas aqui no país diante desses imperativos aí que o Sven comentou? Como é que as empresas têm reagido?
Obrigado, Denise. Eu acho que tem diferentes fases aí da reação, né? Nas últimas semanas, a primeira fase foi realmente para proteger as pessoas, proteger os colaboradores, proteger os clientes, né? E tudo isso seguindo aí as recomendações das entidades de saúde e comunicando rapidamente com a força de trabalho. O que começou depois disso, numa segunda fase que a gente já está talvez aí na segunda ou terceira semana, foi como garantir a continuidade das operações essenciais, né? Como garantir que aqueles produtos e aqueles serviços que são essenciais para todos nós continuem operando, né? Então, primeiro foco foi ajustar as operações, né? E acho que o Sven deu alguns exemplos de produção de alimentos, né? Então, como o layout, como reajustar os processos de uma fábrica para continuar produzindo alimentos. A segunda área é garantir que a cadeia de valor, a cadeia de suprimentos, de nada adianta a sua fábrica ter protocolos novos para continuar permitindo a produção de alimentos, mas o teu fornecedor ou teu provedor de logística não continuar operando da maneira necessária. Então, olhar em toda a cadeia de suprimentos e como estabilizar essa cadeia de suprimentos em colaboração com seus parceiros, com os seus fornecedores. Um terceiro ponto aí, Denise, também foi entender a nova demanda, né? O Sven está falando que alguns produtos, algumas categorias, a demanda sobe, outros cai drasticamente, e como isso vai acontecer ao longo do tempo. Então, entender como a demanda vai estar se comportando para conseguir prover o serviço, por exemplo, da maneira apropriada. E eu diria que talvez o último ponto aí que as empresas se concentraram é em garantir a liquidez financeira. Eu acho que no momento que ainda há muita incerteza, muita volatilidade, ainda não se sabe certamente o que vai acontecer, entender os diferentes cenários e qual que é o impacto no fluxo de caixa é essencial para ter aí, garantir que haja flexibilidade financeira para tomar as decisões e ações que forem necessárias.
Então, a gente está esperando aqui algumas perguntas da audiência. Enquanto isso, eu vou passar para a minha próxima pergunta para você, porque eu queria convidar as pessoas que quiserem mandar perguntas, podem mandar perguntas que elas chegam até mim e eu vou fazer aqui para o Sven e para o Reinaldo. Mas, Reinaldo, então a gente continua aqui. Quais seriam alguns exemplos concretos de ações tomadas até agora que você acha que são efetivas e estão indo pelo caminho correto?
Tá bom, obrigado, Denise. Então, indo em alguns exemplos mais concretos do que eu havia falado, né? Eu acho que o primeiro ponto é uma decisão de eu continuo ou não com a minha produção, né? Eu acho que essa é sim uma consideração que tem que ser feita e uma decisão tomada num nível muito granular, seja por planta, seja por unidade de trabalho, seja por tipo de produto, né? E aí, olha, se você tem que continuar, como mudar rapidamente essa maneira de produzir, de oferecer os serviços. Ou, se você precisar parar a produção nesse momento, se você puder parar nesse momento, também pensar em como fazê-lo, pensando nos custos agora de fazer essa parada da produção, mas também nas consequências para quando você tiver que fazer a retomada. Para essa retomada poder ser mais rápida, para essa retomada poder ser feita de uma maneira mais econômica, né? Aí eu falei um pouco da cadeia de suprimentos, se você tiver que continuar operando para prover produtos e serviços essenciais. Eu acho que um ponto é com bastante cuidado mapear todos os seus fornecedores, né? E entender quem dos seus fornecedores nessa cadeia de suprimento, qual que é a situação de cada um desses fornecedores, né? Qual é o elo mais fraco aqui dessa corrente, né? E poder proativamente iniciar uma colaboração para, junto com o seu fornecedor, ter soluções para o que pode ser a quebra aí na sua cadeia, né? Então, olhar os cenários, qual que é a disrupção potencial e tentar agir antes para evitá-la. Agora, falando um pouco mais do segundo ponto, que é garantir aqui a sustentabilidade financeira, né? A gente ouviu o Sven falar que o impacto econômico aí é o maior desde a Segunda Guerra Mundial. Eu acho que todos nós estamos vendo nos diversos setores da economia qual que é o impacto em queda de vendas, né, em atraso de recebíveis. Então, o primeiro ponto aí, Denise, é realmente entender o fluxo de caixa detalhadamente com diferentes cenários, né? E aqui com várias gradação aí de severidade dos impactos, né? Para entendendo esses cenários, então, por exemplo, olha, o que acontece com o seu fluxo de caixa se o teu maior cliente, o teu maior comprador entrar em dificuldades financeiras, né? O que acontece com o seu fluxo de caixa ali? Para aí poder tomar as atitudes necessárias, as ações necessárias para garantir um nível suficiente de fluxo de caixa para continuar as operações e para estar bem numa retomada. E acho que a outra ação que a gente está vendo muitos dos nossos clientes aqui é olhar muito cuidadosamente também nos custos, né? E aqui é uma oportunidade para reinventar como pensar em custos e também, talvez, nos investimentos que estão sendo feitos, né? Tudo isso com aqui o objetivo de preservar caixa nesse momento para conseguir passar por esse período mais crítico das próximas semanas e meses.
Thank you very, very much, Sven. What a deep discussion, enriched so many useful examples. Thank you very much for being here with us this morning, okay?
I love to be back, and I hope that when we see the innovation happening in Brazil, that brings Brazil's lives and livelihoods back.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to switch back to Portuguese, okay? Thank you. Reinaldo, obrigada também a você pela clareza e perspectiva do que estamos vendo no nosso país, exemplos positivos que estamos vendo aqui no Brasil. Queria agradecer a todo mundo que ficou com a gente nesses últimos 45 minutos. Desculpa, não deu para responder todas as perguntas. Queria convidar vocês para estar aqui também amanhã, no nosso segundo episódio. Vamos ouvir a experiência de um executivo liderando a adaptação rápida e complexa da linha de produção e a jornada de consumo, em uma entrevista com o João Carlos Brega, que é presidente para a América Latina e vice-presidente executivo da Whirlpool Latin America, e também vamos ter a presença do José Carlucci, que é sócio da McKinsey. Para você de casa conhecer a agenda completa do McKinsey Talks, acesse www.mckinseytalks.com. Lá, a partir de amanhã, você vai poder acessar uma versão editada do vídeo dessa conversa de hoje e o link para a versão de áudio disponível no Spotify. Reinaldo.
Obrigado, Denise. Obrigado a todos. E nos vemos amanhã no próximo episódio do McKinsey Talks.
Sven?
I would just wish you strength in what is going to be a complicated time in which you will also find some inspiration.
Ok, I hope so. Thank you, guys. Obrigada a todos, um beijo. Até amanhã, a gente se vê amanhã. Tchau, tchau.